Hey guys, what's up? Um, so I wanted to talk about this thing that happened recently with Vaush and Hasan Piker getting banned from Twitch. So they were banned for using a slur word. They were using the word cracker, like in reference to white people and stuff. Um, and I thought that it was very, very I couldn't help but chuckle a little bit because Vosh and Hassan, they're both far left political YouTubers. They're leftists. I think that they're both openly like avowed socialists. I know that Vosh is. I know that he calls himself a libertarian socialist, which whatever the fuck that means. Um, and Hassan is also a socialist. I believe he's even openly called himself a communist a few times, but you may have to check me on that. But both far left people, both fascists when it comes to speech and whatnot. They've openly, celebrated certain people getting, banned and whatnot and deplatformed plenty of times. They've got no qualms with that. They've got no problem with that, with deplatforming and whatnot, and book burning and stuff like that. If fucking Sargon of Akkad makes a joke on Patreon that's too edgy, he gets banned and whatnot, and they're cheering it on and stuff like that. That being said, though, I don't think that Hassan and Voss should be banned from Twitch. I don't think that they should, because I don't support. I support free speech. I don't support deplatforming and censorship and stuff like that. And the same thing applies with them. I don't like Vosh or Hassan Piker. I really, really cannot stand them. Not just for their because I disagree with just because I heavily disagree with their political stances. I dislike them. I don't like their dispositions. I don't like their personalities. I think that they're both generally pretty unpleasant people. But I don't support them being kicked off Twitch and whatnot. Now, I want to get this out of the way first because, the term cracker and whatnot, which is obviously used as like a pejorative for white people and stuff like that. Now, I was watching The Ranting Monkey because he did a stream on this. He did like a whole stream about 9 hours ago, and I was just now watching it, or listening to it rather. And he brought up something that I didn't know. Apparently, the term cracker actually does have like somewhat of a history. Apparently, it actually dates back to like the 1600s, like the Shakespearean times. And I guess it was a term that was used to refer to like servants and poor white people by the, wealthy and whatnot. They would use the term cracker and then stuff like that. So it does technically have a history, actually. I didn't know that. Like, I had no idea. I thought it was just something that kind of came about within the last, century or last few decades and whatnot, but I didn't know that it actually had like a substantial history and whatnot. Though I'm assuming it just doesn't have like it doesn't have quite the notorious past and notorious violent past as obviously like the N word would and stuff like that. So it leads into a whole discussion about whether it's as serious to say cracker, call a white person cracker as it is to call a black person the N word and whatnot. I do think that although I don't think that cracker it may not be on the same level as some of the other words that we're not supposed to use, but I do think that it can be used in the same like hateful, like mean-spirited, negative light as maybe some of the other words and whatnot. Hassan being a perfect example with what he did. Apparently, he used the term cracker, and then he was, I guess, he was being called out on it or something, or he got like a warning or a smack on the wrist or whatever. Probably something he should have gotten more of as a child, but whatever. And he went into his chat, I think it was his Twitch chat, and he was complaining about it. And then what he said was, he was like, I've been called cracker more times than any of you pasty white crackers. So it was definitely being used in the same light that like a racist person not saying, I mean, like, being anti-white is racist enough, but uh, it was being used in the same light that someone who is using like the N-word unironically is being used and whatnot. Now, in my opinion, see, like, when it comes to speech and like naughty words, I'm very, very I don't know what the term, like, I'm very anti-PC when it comes to that. I think that we tend to give words a lot of the time more power than they actually have. I think that when we realize that a lot of these words are just words and we try to move on from them, then that will be when we can actually get true progress. I think that either, I think that either everyone should, be allowed to use whatever term they want, or no one should at all. I don't think it should be just, this subset of people should be allowed to use this word, and this subset of people should be allowed to use this word and whatnot. And we're seeing that with more and more words. But I don't give a fuck. Like, I'll continue to say retard. I'll continue to say the word faggot. I don't really care. I mean, I've got straight friends who say the word faggot, and I know that they're not actually using it in a derogatory manner. Like, I know that they're using it, either as a joke, or they're using it to describe someone who isn't actually gay, but who is just a huge, huge asshole piece of shit, and there's not really a word strong enough, so they use the word faggot. Like, I understand that. I can not freak out. I can actually use my mind for a second and realize that is the context. And I think that more people should be able to do that. More and more people need to learn how to do that rather than immediately jumping on someone for using a scary word. When it comes to... Now, that's not me endorsing people, like, going to certain types of people, like going to black people and calling them the N-word. I think that's wrong. I think that people who do that should be condemned and criticized and have every possible consequence thrown at them. I don't condone that, but what I'm saying is that we just shouldn't give all these bad words so much power is what I'm saying. Like, it's gotten to the point to where I feel like as a society we're about to just go fucking crazy because there's so much tension. There's so much tension and division and whatnot. I feel like we're just about ready to fucking burst, I don't think that if someone is singing a song or whatever, they're singing the lyrics or whatever to some, Lil Wayne song or whatever, and the N-word is in there and they sing along with that word, I don't think that there is an issue with that, and I don't think that it should be condemned. I'm sorry. It's very different to be singing the lyrics to a song as opposed to being a piece of shit and then ironically actually using that word as a slur towards someone, like using the N-word towards a black person. I think that there's a difference. There's context there, and context matters. So that's really my position. I don't... It's ridiculous, and yeah, I think it's gotten out of hand. Now, as far as Hasan and Vaush getting this happening to them, again, I do think it's a little bit I guess ironic would be the right word to use, given that, like I just explained in the beginning of this video, they are the ones that are the first to be celebrating when people they don't like get deplatformed and whatnot. When it happened to, Alex Jones, for instance, and, other people that they deem to be problematic and Nazis and far right and whatnot. So when the same thing sort of happens to them, when they get the, that taste of what it feels like, it is a little bit funny because they're always the ones encouraging that type of thing. So when the same thing happens to them, you can't help but feel a little bit, feel some satisfaction and whatnot when it happens to them. But like I said, I don't think it should happen to them. I don't think it should happen to anybody. I think that, if an actual, like, leftist communist wants to, speak about how great communism is, they should be allowed to do that. Just as I think that if some fucking, neo-Nazi wants to speak, I think they should have every right to do it. I think that we should get bad ideas out there so that way we can better argue against them. Because in my opinion, when you shut down people for supposedly being too extreme, you create the opposite effect. It makes people curious. It gets them to wonder, well, why was this person, deplatformed or banned or whatever. Why was this particular book? Why was it taken off the shelves? And it just inevitably leads people to those people or those books or whatever else, and finding out about them, and potentially even being supportive of said person or said book and whatnot, when there actually may be some harmful, content in the book or with what the person is saying. I mean, more often than not, with books, it's just like like with Stephen King, he wrote a short story called Rage, where I know this is a tangent, but I'm just saying. He wrote this short story called Rage, where this kid basically went into a class, shot the teacher, and took the class hostage. And they ended up taking it off the shelves because of, I believe it was the Columbine shootings, because they said that, I guess, that book was found in the locker of, it may have been the Columbine shooters or some other shooter and whatnot. And it may also have been just because it was similar content with, kid coming in, shooting the teacher and whatnot, committing the same type of crime. And so they like, oh shit, we better take this book off the shelves because, maybe it's getting kids to shoot shit up and whatnot. I mean, it's the same thing as like the violence in video games argument. But it's the same thing as that. I mean, people are just going to be, they're going to get curious and they're going to go hunt down that book and read it and whatnot. And, people like Richard Spencer gets deplatformed. They're just going to be like, I wonder what this guy was saying. They're going to go watch him, And now I think that a lot of people are secure within their own beliefs that they won't be immediately converted. But you never know. Some people might be more gullible. And they might listen to what someone like Spencer has to say, and they might be, convinced of his beliefs and whatnot. So I don't think that deplatforming really does much of anything. It just gives that person more support in a way. But, as far as Vaush and Hasan, I don't think it should have happened to them. I don't like him. Like I said, I don't like him, and it's not just because of their beliefs. I don't like them as people. I think that Vaush is pretty familiar to people who watch me. I think everyone pretty much knows who Vaush is. He's said and done some pretty shitty things, including that comment about CP. Child pornography, saying that in order to be consistent with his own belief system, the age of consent should be lowered and whatnot. And him saying that he hasn't really heard a compelling argument for ethical CP and whatnot. And of course his fans are always saying, oh, you're missing context and shit like that. But no, it's Vaush is just kind of always bad faith too and whatnot, and dishonest. When you actually pick apart, because he's good at speaking. Like, Vaush is a really good public speaker, and he uses a lot of big words and uses a lot of word salads. But when you actually pick apart what he's actually saying, you realize he's not saying a whole lot, and he's easily refutable. So, Vaush is he's a con man. He's a hypocrite too. He doesn't live by his principles. And Destiny of all people, exposed him for that, for basically being a grifter. Hasan Piker, same thing. If you don't know, he's the nephew of Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, and he is probably worse than they are, if you can imagine that. Hasan Piker's a hypocrite too. I mean, he's an arrogant, smug, spoiled little brat. And he doesn't live by his principles either. He's a socialist who supposedly cares about poor people and working class people and whatnot, and has criticized rich people in the past for having more than they actually need. Like, oh, do you really need this house? Do you really need this mansion? When a few months ago, I think it was, he bought a $1.3 million house. So do you really need that $1.3 million house, Hasan? Do you really need that? Is it necessary? Hey, I'm directing what you've said in the past back towards you. And when that happened, people rightfully, criticized him and whatnot, and called him out for being a hypocrite, which he is. He is a hypocrite. Vaush is too. All of these so-called socialist communists are. These first world socialist, first world communist, wine-sipping socialist, they're all hypocrites. you know, if they actually lived by their ideals, they would live, but beneath their means. If Hasan actually wanted to follow his ideals, he would live beneath his means. Why not just get like a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, like studio apartment and live well beneath your means and donate a bunch of that money that you get from super chats and whatnot to charities or stuff that actually will go towards helping people who are, the unfortunate, the less well off, poor people, stuff like that, people that you claim to care about, that you claim to support. You would do that, but you don't, and it's because you don't actually give a shit. You're just a grifter. Vaush is too, and a lot of these other people that are like-minded are too. Yeah, I mean, and I was actually watching this Destiny video. Now, granted, I don't agree with everything Destiny says, but he actually made a good point about this type of thing, about people like Hasan and whatnot, because, Hasan is always bitching about, privileged white men or something like that, which is funny because Hasan is white, and from what we can tell, he is very, very, very privileged. There's no doubt in my mind that he probably grew up in some, like suburban lily white neighborhood, had every opportunity handed to him. He certainly was more, well off in a better position than, someone like me was, or a lot of other people who are white were probably not as in good of a position as he was, So when he goes on those diatribes about, white, spoiled white men, he's just projecting. He's just majorly projecting. And that's what a lot of these white leftists do, is they project. But what Destiny was saying is that a lot of these people who do that, they're actually compensating for their own, like, racism and whatnot. Like, they know that you can't just go around calling black people the N-word. Like, you can't do that. Same thing with all the other slurs for all the other groups of people. You can't do that. Well, I mean, you can, but, like, you shouldn't, but whatever. You get what I mean. But you can use the word, like in this instance, cracker, and use that towards white people and shit on white people, because, I mean, it's not like you'll be reprimanded or get any consequences or whatever. Yeah, you can pretty much do that all fucking day long. And so that's what, leftists do. They do that to, compensate for their actual inner, like, hateful, negative, toxic attitudes that they would probably otherwise direct at, black people or gay people and stuff like that, if they were able to. If it wouldn't get them into trouble within their own communities and within their own supposed political beliefs. If they could, if it was perfectly allowed, they probably would, but they can't. But then they're like, oh, well, it's, cracker, that's okay, so I'll just do this all day long. And that's kind of the point that Destiny was making. Not a perfect summarization, but, that's basically the essence of what he was saying, and it makes sense. It does make sense because, leftists and, far leftists and woke skulls and stuff like that, there is definitely a big obsession with race among those subsets of people. Very similar to, like, the alt-right and their obsession with race and whatnot. I mean, they're basically the same. They're both obsessed with race. It's just different variations. It's just different flavors. It's just, what flavor of ice cream do you want, vanilla or chocolate? It's basically the same thing, just different flavors. Yeah, so anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say. So I guess, yeah, I don't want them to be banned. I don't want anyone to be banned. If I was to come on here and say, oh, it's good that they got banned, whatever, because I don't like them, I'd be hypocritical. I would be going against my principles and whatnot. But no, I genuinely don't think they should be banned. Not at all. I don't think anyone should be, Anyways, that's about all I have to say. What do you guys think? Let me know. And I'll talk to you guys later, soon, hopefully. Peace. Have a good day.